Hi guys, Happy New Year. It is December 31st. So we are just hanging out today. It's Sunday. And generally we're doing what we do every other Sunday of the year, which is just kind of chill. I honestly doubt we'll even stay up to watch the ball drop. We really haven't done that in like forever. I feel like anytime I can get extra sleep as an adult, I'm just gonna go for the extra sleep. The ball drop and stuff, while it's nice when I was like 20, now it's kind of like, no. Anyways, with all that said, Happy New Year. This is a knitting podcast where I talk to you about knitting and crochet, any crafting that I spend the week doing. I'm generally really into knitting sweaters. I'm gonna go with my favorite go-to pattern category. That's what I'm trying to say. That's my go-to pattern category that I usually stick with. I've been known to knit hats, crochet hats, blankets, but mainly I really like to focus on sweaters. I am going to talk about some of my goals this year that I've been kind of bopping around in my head. So it's a new year. Well, not yet. Tomorrow is a new year. We all like New Year's resolutions, I guess they're referred to as, but I really want to focus on different aspects of my knitting. I see a lot of like make 9 boards on Instagram where people come up with 9 patterns that they want to knit in the new year. And I don't think that's good for me to do. And I have a couple of reasons. The main reason is I tend to pick what I'm going to knit about 30 seconds before I cast on, or crochet for that matter. So I have like a running list of patterns in my head, like a huge list, and I'll just randomly decide, hey, I'm gonna knit that. A lot of times make-alongs will help, like knit-alongs, craft-alongs will inspire me to cast on a specific pattern, but generally I have no idea what I'm going to be casting on until I actually do. So I've tended to stray away from like the make 9s just on account of that. So what I really want to do for the new year is come up with, and I believe I have, a list of just a couple of items about knitting or crafting in general that I want to focus on. So I will talk about those after I show you my knitted finished object, my crocheted finished object and my knitting work in progress. I also have a couple of yarns that I'm going to show you because I'm casting them on this week. So I've really been thinking in my head that I want to work up some hats and I want to work up some bulky hats. So I went and picked out some bulky yarn that I have, and I have 4 skeins of it, so I'm going to show you that. And hopefully next week there'll be hats, because spoiler alert, I am this close to being done with my Advent cardigan. So, I could have finished it. I could be finishing it right now, but like I'm recording and I wanted to record before it got too late, because the later it gets, the more likely I am to just want to be sleeping instead of podcasting. So real talk. Okay, so my first finished object is the mermaid tail blanket that I made for my 8-year-old. The pattern I believe is called Sophie's Mermaid Tail Blanket, and I can't remember who wrote it, but I will put it down below. And it is exactly what it sounds like, a mermaid tail blanket. Now, this was made with a loops and threads yarn, and it's I wouldn't call the yarn super soft, but it's not rough. Okay, so I would call like merino or, you know, super, super soft. Even like they have some acrylic that's just super soft. This isn't super soft. I would consider this more of like a sturdier acrylic, which is actually honestly perfect for what this is going to be used for, which is crawling and wiggling around on the floor and pretending to be a mermaid, which is exactly what it's meant to do. So I love this pattern. I've made it once before. I actually crocheted this the first time, the February before the pandemic hit. So like just a couple of months before, we had driven to Cleveland Clinic and we had to take my kiddos because we just don't have babysitting for 7 hours, well actually more. It's a long drive there and a long drive back, and we had to stay there, and it was a whole thing. So I took my kiddos and I crocheted on this for my daughter in the car. Not this one, the previous one. Anyways, she was playing with it earlier, like maybe like a month or two ago, and she goes to me, "Mom, this is getting too small. Can you please make me a new one?" So I did. And the yarn that I used was 100% acrylic, and it was in a put up of, I believe, 816 yards. So I used 1.5 of those. And it is the perfect size for her. She wanted it to come right up to her waist. I could have made it bigger. I could have made it wider. She wanted it to come up exactly to her waist. I had toyed around with the idea of maybe making some crochet ribbing to kind of cinch in the waist, but she didn't seem to want that very much, so I kind of left it alone. I really do like the way that the fin is worked up, and this project is pretty easy, and I honestly don't believe it would have taken me very long if I hadn't have been working on the Advent at the same time. So my Advent knitting had been taking up most of my crafting time for the day. I believe it was like 2 hours I would work on it at night. And then by the time that was done, I'm like, okay, no more. We're done. So I had reserved this for when I got caught up with the Advent, or maybe some on weekends. But it's done now, and this will be the last time you will see it. So if you look at the stitch pattern, it is just some shell crochet there, and they're offset, and it goes all the way up. So if you've ever done like a shell stitch in crochet, it's basically just that offset. I really do like the pattern, and I believe it's a paid for pattern. I got that pattern so long ago. Like I said, I worked on it the February before the pandemic, so I have no clue how much it costs, but I'm almost positive it's a paid for pattern. But I was excited for this to be done, and my daughter's going to be excited too, because now I'm going to be able to give it to her. Because honestly, like, I go, okay, kiddo, you can have it, but let me just take some pictures of it first before, you roll around on the floor with it. So I'm going to show you my Advent knitting next. I'm super excited about this project. Now, this is the Daft Days cardigan, and I'm trying not to make a mess pulling it out. This is the Daft Days cardigan by Rebecca Clow, and I finished the sleeves this week. Now, this is, it's super funny, right? Okay, so I have the stitches picked up for the neckline, And I've basically just picked up the stitches and haven't knit any ribbing on it yet. But I have the button band done. Okay, so you can see down here the entire color, the entire color gradient. I guess we'll go with gradient. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say there, but you can see the entire I give up. You see the colors, right? All of them. It starts with yellow. Here we go. Okay, now look at my arms. My poor, well, I can't really say they're short because it's a drop shoulder sweater, but it only goes to green. So, like that. And the rest I don't use, which is sad because I really like the pinks down below. I love the way that the button band brings this together though, and I'm super excited to see the ribbing on the neck. Now, there's a specific number, what do I want to call it? There's a specific recipe in the pattern for how you're supposed to, like the number of stitches you're supposed to pick up for the button band. And I believe that recipe worked like super well for me, so I was really excited about that. Generally, when I'm doing a pattern and it goes, okay, pick up this many stitches around the collar, my go-to way to do that is I have locking stitch markers, and I will break the collar in, not break it, I will section it off in half and then section it off in quarters and basically divide the number of stitches in 4 and then try to pick up that many per section so that it's evened out. But I did like this idea of just doing so many stitches per, pick up so many stitches per so many stitches to pick up, and it seemed like that worked pretty well. The only hard, well, I guess I can't really say that. So when I pick up a button band alongside a cardigan, and say the pattern says pick up 100 stitches, I tend to ignore that number, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because my length on cardigans is so variable, especially with, so I've knit a lot of Joji Locatelli designs, and she will say, knit 19 inches from your underarm. I am so short. I wish I could knit 19 inches and not like be a tunic on me, but I can't do that. So I tend to have to kind of make up my own numbers for the button band. The collar is always a little bit easier because it's obviously closer to the pattern than the length would be, but length is always variable for everyone, right? Everybody's a different height, so it's hard to say exactly how many stitches you'll need. It's a little bit easier just to say pick up so many stitches per so many. This is such a pretty, I'm going to have so much fun when this is done and wearing it. So if you listened last week, I talked about how I'm going to be knitting my mom an Irish gold from Joji Locatelli. And my daughter, I had told her that I was going to be knitting Grandma a sweater, and I was holding this one up, and I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, oh, is that for Grandma? And I'm like, no, this one's for me. My mom, I mean, she'd knit, or she would wear anything I knit her because, you know, she's my mom. But I think she would very much like a dark colored something, sweater, cardigan, or whatever. So I wouldn't give her bright colors like this unless she requested them, and then that would be fine. But she requested actually this color right here. It's Black #1 by Blackbird Sycamore. I have some skeins of it and I ordered some more, and I'm super excited to cast that on. I have some hats like I'm knitting very soon, like as soon as this is done, and then I'm gonna cast that on for her. I didn't mention this, but I am wearing oh wow, this sweater is a pattern by Pearl Soho, and I think it's called the Daily Pullover. Maybe it's the Daily something, and it's knit with linen quill, and linen quill kind of itches my neck, so I have to wear a tank top. I have to wear a tank top under it. I am so tongue-tied today. It must be the new year. I hope everybody had a great Christmas if you celebrate, or just a great last week. We did. My kiddos were super happy with everything, and you know, they get so excited when Grandma and Grandpa come over, and it's just kind of sad. It kind of makes me forlorn that it's over, right? Like, it seems as though the from September until like January, it's all build up to the holidays, and then as soon as it's over, it's like, well, what else is there to look forward to? And there really isn't much. I know that sounds sad. I am not a big winter person. I have super I am just not a good winter person. I do not like rainy, dreary, cloudy. If I could, like, if I was an animal, I would be like a reptile that had like a sun lamp and like a nice warm rock. How about that? We'll go with that. Okay, so I have some things that I'm going to cast on. I mentioned that, right? So let me grab this, because this is probably my most favorite thing that I've been waiting to use. So this is Malabrigo Caracal. I think that's how you say it. So this color is magenta, and you can see like the nylon thread running through it, like, well, it's wrapping it. So a funny story, right? I was so super excited to get this, and my daughter, she looks at the yarn and breaks my heart. She goes, "Oh, is that Spider-Man yarn?" And now I cannot see anything but Spider-Man. So, I mean, I still love it, but she hit it right on the head. That looks so much like Spider-Man. How sad for me, because now that's all I'm ever going to see. But this is going to be a hat. I'm almost positive it's just going to be a plain stockinette hat. This is 90 yards per 150 grams, so it's 2.25 stitches per inch, and it says to use between a US 13 to 15. So this says it's kettle dyed. Pure superwash merino wool. I'm actually interested, right? Because this is pretty much just, I mean, it's like not plaited. The magenta yarn that's encapsulated with the nylon thread is not plied at all. There's really no twist to it. It's just like a long strand of roving almost. So I'm interested to see if this nylon thread that wraps around it stops it from pilling as much, maybe. But either way, it's gonna be a hat for me. So I'm not going to have to worry about like my kids being rough and tumble with it, but I thought that this would be just a fun yarn to try. And since it's a bulkier yarn, it's not much in the way of knitting, right? I love that. Even though she said it was Spider-Man. So the next one that I have, and I've used Cascade yarns 220 before, but this is 128, and it is 100 grams and 128 yards, which makes perfect sense. So this is going to be a hat for my daughter, and it's not too bulky, not like this one, obviously. You can see the difference, but I'm going to make this as just I feel like knitting stockinette hats, so that is what I'm going to be doing. I kind of wish I had a color to offset this one, but I have some Cascade 220 and I could hold it double, which would kind of work, but I don't know that I want to. Yeah, I just want to make plain stockinette for right now. I have some Cascade 220 Superwash that I want to make some more odd stripes hats out of, but I've just been not in too much of a hatting. I've been in not too much of a hat knitting mood, so I'm hoping that knitting some bulkier hats will kind of bring that back for me. So this is a Mad Tosh yarn, and it's ASAP, and it is 90 yards for 100 grams. So it's considered super bulky, and I thought that this was pretty. And the colorway is Grace Notes. And I have this one as well, which is the same yarn, and it's called Blood Runs Cold. I wonder if I could combine these two together, but I mean, I don't know, right? Because this one, Grace Notes, it has like a purplish pink, but this is blood red. So more than likely the answer is going to be no, that I am not going to combine them together, but that I am going to make what I planned on making, which is stockinette hats. That is hopefully what I'm planning on doing. I have been talking to my daughter about possibly making her a dress. So I'm trying to think of a good dress pattern, and I know I could make a dress out of a crochet. They have a lot of Crochet kids dress patterns, and I could do that. But what I really want, and this is what I have in my head, right? I want to make like a tank top up top, and then like a swirly twirly dress, like almost like a star blanket, but like a dress instead. So like it just swirly twirlies everywhere. And I don't know of a pattern that does that yet. I haven't looked though, to be fair. The yarn that I have that I want to use is a cotton acrylic, and it's fingering weight, and I have about 1,100 yards of it, and it's a gradient, and it's a gradient that goes from black to gray to white to light pink to hot pink. So I know she's going to like it. I want to make a swirly twirly dress because I never have, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So to make my daughter something is generally pretty quick, just because she's she's 8, right? Whenever you knit or crochet something for a little kid, it's quick. So, and then when you do it for like an adult, it takes a lot longer because, but although I will be using fingering weight, so it might not be as quick as I'm thinking in my head. But the hats are my plan, and then after that, my mom's sweater, and probably somewhere in between my daughter's swirly twirly dress. So as for New Year's goals and things like that, like I've mentioned, I want to kind of focus on certain aspects of crafting as opposed to like patterns that I want to make. So one of the big things that I want to focus on in my crafting is finishing and kind of getting better at being able to finish items, getting better at weaving in ends, getting better at sewing things together, getting better at putting patterns together, sewing patterns together that are pieced instead of just doing top down for a lot of stuff. I want to maybe even try to put a zipper in. I've done that before, but I would really like to do just work through the process and do a very good job at it. How's that? So I think that finishing my knitting and my crochet is something that I really want to work on as a crafter. The other main item that I want to work on with knitting, well, I can't say that. I have two more. Another one that I want to work on is color work. Now, I love color work and I love the way that it looks. I am in awe at all color work garments and all color work hats, and it's beautiful, and there's so many things that you can do with it, but I am just not great at it. I have noticed that when I do color work, I have uneven tension, and I really want to work on kind of getting the puckering to not happen as much, getting things to lay flat. I want to look into doing learning how to do ladder back jacquard. I want to learn how to deal with floats, which I guess would be ladder back jacquard, how to make the tension even, how to just make it look like a more of a garment that I can be proud of, or a hat I can be proud of. Well, I guess a hat is a garment. You guys know what I mean, right? So I can do color work, and I have done color work, but I want to do better color work. How's that? I really feel like there are so many beautiful patterns out there that I'd love to do, but I don't feel like my skill's up there yet as a knitter, and I would really like to kind of level up the color work. Now, as for learning something that I don't really know how to do, at least not very well, I would love to this is my third item that I want to kind of work on. I would love to start doing brioche. Now, I've done brioche before, and I've made 3 brioche, like 3 plain, well, I guess it's not plain, 3 brioche ribbed hats. And I was able to do them, and I completed them after about pulling my hair out because I kept dropping stitches or screwing up, and then I would have to rip the whole thing out. And then finally I started putting lifelines in, and it was a whole disaster. And I'm just like, you know what? I really want to be able to knit better brioche, right? And when I say better brioche, I mean like one step up from a complete newbie. So like if I screw up a brioche stitch, maybe I know how to fix it. Or if I drop a stitch, I know how to fix it. Or just pretty much anything. Reading brioche stitches. Although I don't know that would be that difficult, but still, just getting more familiar with brioche. I have a pattern that I really want to do called the brioche hug, and I just put it off because I know how hard brioche is. It takes a long time. It's double the stitches, right? Yeah. And it's just a lot. And even though I have all the yarn wound up for it, I've kind of just put it off and put it off and put it off. And I don't want to put it off anymore. I would really like the brioche hug. So I'm going to kind of try to buckle down this year and work on it. And I guess we'll see what happens. The worst thing that could possibly happen is, I end up with a bunch of knotted yarn and I have to untangle it, which still, that happens all the time, so it's not a big deal. But those are my 3 main kind of knitting, crafting goals. Just to work on my finishing. And you know what? Finishing will help with machine knitting. Finishing will help with crochet, knitting. And then color work, that's more of, I can color work with machine knitting, but what I really want to focus on is color work with hand knitting. And then brioche. So I'm hoping that this upcoming year in 2024, I can work through some of those goals and see where I end up next year at this time. Hopefully, I'll have been able to work on some of those. So that's pretty much all of the knitting content that I have this week. I'll talk about life stuff for like 5 minutes. The big exciting thing in my life this week, besides, Christmas, is this really pretty cube where I am now storing my sweaters, and that made me super happy. I was watching Instagram Reels, and it's really funny too, right? Because, so this cardigan, the Daphne's cardigan, is written by Rebecca Clow. And I saw an Instagram Reel with her where she was talking about how to store your hand knit sweaters. And she showed a cube, an 8 cube, and I went out and got an 8 cube so that I could store my sweaters like she showed in the Instagram Reel, because I thought it was a really good idea. So I was super excited to get it, and I am going to crochet some mini plants to put up top here, which is one of the other many projects that I will try to fit in sometime in the upcoming weeks. So fingers crossed for me. Other than that, I had a nice short week last week, and I have a nice short week next week. And I have been working on an AWS class and doing a whole bunch of demos in it. And that sounds very boring and uninteresting and not at all about like knitting or happy crafting stuff, but that's pretty much what I've been working on. In terms of books, I've been reading Needful Things by Stephen King. I have about 13 hours left of it, so it's an Audible book I've been listening to. It's interesting. He can write some stories, and I love his character development. He writes about a fictional town called Castle Rock, Maine, and some of his stories with like the characters go like spanning different novels. So we've mentioned this character in Cujo that's now being mentioned in Needful Things, or vice versa. It's just interesting. I do like his stories, and I love listening to how he writes his characters, but I can't say that's the only book, because one of the books that I had on hold from Libby showed up. So I rented it, and it's called Shatter Me, and I cannot remember who wrote it. And I started listening to it, and I noped out of it very, very fast. And it's something about me and how I have to be in a specific mood to listen to different stories. But I have an issue to where I don't do well with romance stories, and I don't know if that's what this book is, because I didn't even reread what it was about before I checked it out, but like I noped out of it after she or the main character had mentioned that they had been stuck inside a prison for like a year and hadn't talked to anybody in a year and had no communication with anyone, and they ate this really bad food and it was awful and terrible. And then they threw a cellmate in with this person who was a boy, and all this the narrator was talking about was like how perfect his body was. And I'm just like, you've been in isolation for a year. I can't do it. So I turned it off and went back to Needful Things. I really did try, and I'm sure it's a great story, but like, I like sci-fi and like horror books. So that is me in a nutshell. So tomorrow we are going to go to my uncle's, I believe, and just chill out there for New Year's Day. My kids are excited. They really, really love when we go out there. And I think that's it. We'll see my mom and my aunts and my nephew and just kind of chill out. We haven't given my nephew his presents yet, and I'm sure he'll be super excited about them. We got him some sort of Lego sets that, you know, I miss when my son was his age. He was so easy to buy for. When my son was like 6, 7, 8, he was so easy to buy for. He loved Legos, like any Legos. Like, it didn't even matter what type of Legos. And now it's just, he's getting older. He's a teen. He's like 6 days from becoming a teenager. His birthday's on January 5th, so I can't believe it. I still remember when he was a baby. Anyways, that's pretty much all that's going on with us. I'm very happy that you decided to spend a little bit with me, and I hope you got some crafting done and this was at least a little bit entertaining to you. If you'd like to see more, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I will catch you guys next week. And one more thing, I hope you guys have an awesome week and a happy new year. Thank you. Bye.